What impresses God? What impresses Jesus? We see examples in the Gospels of Jesus being impressed with people. In this Gospel, we have a parable explaining something Jesus is not impressed with. He does not consider building up one's own possessions to be impressive. He is not impressed at all. This is a parable where God actually calls a man a fool. Sometimes I look at the value of collectibles, such as art or musical recordings or baseball cards, and this value can fluctuate greatly over the course of years. Mainly it depends on what is trending among the wealthy. A painting that sells at auction for $1 million this year might sell for more next year, but it also might sell for less. It depends on who is most covetous of it in a given year and how much money they have. It's arbitrary. There are no fixed prices. The value is based on what Jesus warns against in this parable, covetousness. So, is Jesus impressed with someone who buys a painting for $1 million? I think we can safely say no based on the various things he says in the Gospels, and in particular what he says here. Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. The word translated greed here is sometimes translated as covetous. I think the idea of covetousness gives a better sense of what Jesus is saying. To be covetous is to desire more of something, probably more than the people around you have. It can imply competition or a feeling of superiority. Greed does not necessarily imply this. The man in the parable feels good about his decision to build some new barns. The implication in the parable is that he should share his excess, but instead he keeps his grain completely for himself. In the Old Testament, Joseph has grain stored up for what he knows will be years of famine, but he does it for the benefit of the people of Egypt, not for himself. Jesus does not speak against the man because he is rich, but in light of his desire to become more wealthy. The man is covetous. We might ask if it is wrong in general to have $1 million painting in the house. Perhaps it can be considered an investment. But at the same time, there is no guarantee it will become more valuable. I think I can safely say that Jesus is not impressed even if the $1 million painting is of Jesus himself. Jesus is impressed with someone who gives a cup of cold water to someone who needs it. Jesus is impressed with giving shelter to the homeless. Jesus is impressed with visiting the sick. Jesus is impressed with sharing the gospel. We know these things for certain. As an aside, we don't always have to directly share the gospel. Giving someone a compact disc of a talk can be sharing the gospel. Or perhaps encouraging someone to go to the upcoming Faith on Fire event. This event is a formal way of sharing the gospel, and it does need promoters. Perhaps recommending the event to someone who needs to have their faith revitalized would be something that Jesus would appreciate. Based on this parable, however, Jesus is not impressed with buying valuable collectibles. Their value is set by wealthy human beings, not God. Yes, quality goods can give enjoyment. For instance, a good stereo system gives better sound than a cheaper one. But God is not going to judge us on the sound quality of our stereo system. We should make it a priority to be wealthy in the things that matter to God, keeping in mind the words of Jesus at the end of this parable. Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God.